Climate change is the greatest threat facing the planet.
Climate change is a more serious threat even than the threat of global terrorism. Conflict and terrorism are likely to be massively exacerbated by these problems.
Rich countries cause climate change, and yet it's the poor countries that are feeling the effects. Bangladeshi will emit only about 3 tonnes of CO2 every year, and yet in Bangladesh we're seeing floods happening at an increasingly alarming rate.
Frustrated by the apparent inaction of government and big business, people are fighting back.
We can't rely on politicians and corporations to sort out the climate crisis. The UN say we have less than 100 months to stop dangerous and irreversible climate change.
Every day is a day for direct action. And if you look around you, you'll always find something which is wrong.
Next month, thousands of campaigners will descend on Kingsnorth, Kent, to oppose the building of a new coal-fired power station by the energy giant E.ON. The climate camp will be the biggest yet of a growing wave of protests and direct actions targeting the aviation and energy industries. Activists already claim there have been unprecedented attempts to disrupt and discredit the climate campaign. So what kind of reception might the Kingsnorth protesters expect? Earlier this year, an Oxford student was unmasked as an undercover agent paid to spy on the anti-aviation group Plain Stupid.
He told the London group, he was called Ken Tobias, and he was really passionate about global warming, really worried about the impacts of the aviation industry, and was constantly advocating as more and more radical types of action, really like agent provocateur type stuff.
It was not the first time environmental activists had been infiltrated.
Excuse me, you a member of the Metropolitan Police by any chance?
No. Over the years we've noticed that time and time again the harassment starts before a protest, where they have undercover policemen, they have secret agencies infiltrating protest groups and trying to find out movements, who these people are, where they're going and what they're planning next.
Such tactics worry both campaigners and politicians alike.
I think infiltration, if done by large organisations or security organisations into protesting groups of the kind that we are talking about, is a contemptible thing to do. But infiltration in order deliberately to stimulate illegal acts, in order to bring that organisation into disrepute, that goes beyond contemptible and becomes criminal.
Plain Stupid were also on the receiving end of a controversial injunction brought about by BAA, operators of Heathrow.
They went to the High Court to try and get the injunction against Plain Stupid and the whole of the Airport Watch coalition. So they were trying to injunct millions of people. You know, they openly said at the beginning that they wanted to injunct members of the National Trust, the WI, the RSPB, really anyone who's ever been concerned about airport expansion. They went to incredible lengths to try and stop it from happening.
Similar injunctions are now being rolled out against climate campaigners across the UK. The police have been accused of using heavy-handed tactics, excessive surveillance and misusing anti-terrorism laws. Malcolm Carroll found himself in the firing line after leading the now famous Sermon on the Runway.
The police presence was quite bizarre. Helicopter overhead and apparently armed police in the woods and stuff. And what happened was 2 hostage negotiators came on and they were treating it as a terrorist incident. Why did they do that? Why did they refer it to the serious organised crime agency? We're not criminals, we're peaceful protesters saying exactly what we're doing, giving our names, obeying bail conditions, always turning up at court. That's who we are. They know us. So why treat us with the soccer thing as if we are a major drugs ring? I think there is a political motive there. There's a political driver. The policing isn't a neutral thing.
What we've been increasingly finding is that police intimidation has been severely on the rise, especially in the London area, from my own personal experience. People have always expected that if you do a protest, the police are going to come along. Now, you'd expect the police to be impartial and say, okay, you're handing out flyers, okay, you know, there's nothing actually illegal about that, so what we're going to do is we're going to go away. And, you know, if you smash windows, we'll come back and arrest you. And everyone will go, well, fair enough, you know.
Watchdog groups agree some legislation is being misused.
The Terrorism Act, and in particular the stop and search powers under Section 44 of the Terrorism Act, have been used repeatedly to restrict or interfere with people exercising their right to peaceful protest. So although in theory the legislation is designed obviously to deal with terrorism, in practice it's being used far more widely to stop and search and interfere with people.
If you went and spoke to British people and said, do you think that terrorist legislation aimed at Al-Qaeda and the like should be used and employed against climate change protesters, there would be a resounding no.
Campaigning journalists covering protests say they too have been targeted by the police, leading to accusations of news management.
None of our journalists are charged. It's a constant thing. We're arrested, we're seized, we're held in police custody until after the deadlines for the news have passed. Now, the only thing we can say is that it's news management.
Undercurrent's groundbreaking investigation put the issue on the political map, although the problem persists.
Here you are?
Yeah, I'm a member of the press, yeah.
You are? What part?
I'm a freelance journalist.
So you're not really a member of the press, are you?
I'm a member of the press, yes.
Freelance journalist? And you're just doing this?
Sorry?
Switch the camera off.
Can I ask you why you want me to turn my camera off?
Right, you're filming me now, aren't you? It's my civil.
Energy corporations, the police and some in the mainstream media stand accused of generating inflammatory headlines.
If you look at the PR machine, again, all paid for by the public, we pay for police public relations officers to lie to the press about what's going to happen at protests. So if you look at the various right-wing tabloids, the week or so before the BA protest last year, you had protesters making bombs, protesters with knives, protesters are going to crash planes into your children, you know. Now, where's that coming from?
In a landmark case, the Evening Standard was rebuked by the Press Complaints Commission for fabricating a story about campaigners at Heathrow.
Before the climate camp last summer, the Evening Standard began its kind of militant campaign of smear against the climate camp and said that climate campers might plant bomb packages and might do this and might do that, climb fences and block planes and do everything that you can imagine. All things, a lot of the things that have been explicitly ruled out by the climate camp.
This is seen as symptomatic of a wider problem with the reporting of environmental activism.
You have journalists who are kind of reading from press releases and they're regurgitating what corporations send out to them. Very few journalists actually go to an event. So they're taking the police's word, they're taking press releases from a corporation, and there's kind of a distrust of campaigners.
Commentators say there is a long history of negative spinning against environmental campaigners.
There was a fundamental attempt by industry and the PR industry to shift environmental activists from the middle of the debate to the extremes. And the way they would do that is to try and label them as violent, as extremists, and they would twist the language coming from environmental groups. At the same time, they would greenwash themselves and their image to move themselves from the side of the debate into the mainstream.
Back in Kent, the ecologists found widespread opposition to E.ON's planned power station at Kingsnorth.
I'm against it, yes, I'm against it.
I agree with you.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much.
I think they could do better than building a power station there.
I don't agree with it at all.
No.
It's going to cause nothing but misery, deaths.
We'd like to see them phased out because of the CO2 emissions and the fact that, you know, there are better ways of producing electricity in this country that the government should be focusing on.
Bob Marshall-Andrews, the local MP, has himself raised serious concerns about the development.
The proposal for a coal-fired power station at Kingsnorth, after carefully considering it, I came down quite firmly against it.
As demonstrators gather next month, all sides in the growing conflict over climate change will be watching closely. It could prove to be a defining moment.
Kingsnorth is a massive campaign. It's a line in the sand, I think, in the campaign to stop climate change.
Every day there's another indicator that climate change is happening faster, quicker, more violently than even the scientists' worst predictions. We have to act now. In the history of protests, it is up there as one of the most important issues ever faced by humanity.